Now it's time to watch what was promised to show how the virtual private network, also known as VPN, can also be hacked. VPN protects network connection when using public networks. VPNs encrypt your internet traffic and disguise your online identity. This makes it even more difficult for third parties to track your activities online and steal data. Now I would request Mr. Prasad T, CISO InstaSafe, to address the audience. Mr. Prasad is a strong visionary leader who motivates and inspires whilst focusing intensively on cyber security and related threats. Mr. Prasad has more than 16 years of experience in increasingly responsible roles within engineering and leadership across several companies. He has found and driven a cyber security organization in the past and is the CISO at InstaSafe. Prasad is an OSCP certified security professional who has secured multiple organizations from hackers. He is also an avid offensive security researcher and has led CTFs and offensive threat hunting campaigns and defense against attacks for multiple Fortune 500 organizations. Before the session starts, I would request Dr. Deepak Kumar Sahu, Chief Editor, Bar India, to speak on this live hacking session as the disclaimer.
Good evening, friends. As companies extend commitments to remote workforces, cybersecurity teams need to address new risks while helping create business value in the next normal. As the COVID-19 pandemic swept across the world, most organizations made a quick transition to a remote workforce and a more intense focus on serving customers through digital channels. This created a rapid surge in demand for digital capabilities, products and services. Cybersecurity team for their part were largely successful in taking on a dual mission of supporting business continuity and protecting the enterprise and its customers. The digital response to the COVID-19 crisis has also created new security vulnerabilities. Attackers seek to exploit the gaps opened when telecommuting employees use insecure devices and networks. Threat actors also use known attack techniques to exploit people's COVID-19 related fears. For example, Google tailed more than 18 million malware and phishing emails related to the novel coronavirus on its service each day in April. It also reported identifying more than a dozen government-backed groups using COVID-19 themes for these attempts. The COVID-19 pandemic and the efforts to contain it have had serious economic and business consequences. These are affecting core dimensions of the business environment, from digital strategies to operational and enterprise risk appetite. Supply chain configuration and business interactions with regulators are likewise being reshaped, as are the ways we think about the very nature of work. A McKinsey survey of digital sentiment revealed that most employees who are now telecommuting do not expect to return to the workplace soon. 70% of those responding believe that the ability to contain telecommuting will factor into the next job choice. Customers express similar sentiments. 75% of respondents using digital channels as a result of the COVID-19 crisis say that they will continue to do so. Chief Information Security Officers, CISOs and cybersecurity teams will need to approach the next horizon of business with a dual mindset. They must first address the new risks arising from the shift to a remote digital working environment, securing the required technology. They will also need to anticipate the next normal, how their workforce, customers, supply chain, channel partners and sector peers will work together so that they may appropriately engage and embrace security by design. The new context of changing customer and employee behavior and a constantly shifting their threat landscape must also be considered. The pandemic response has underscored the vital role that security plays in enabling remote operations both during and after a crisis. As companies reimagine their process and redesign architecture amid the COVID-19 response, cybersecurity teams are being perceived anew. They must no longer be seen as a barrier to growth, but rather become recognized as strategic partners in technology and business decisions in making. With this, my request Mr. Prasad to share his presentation.
Hi everyone, this is Prasad. Today in this conversation, we are going to talk about the cyber paradigm today, cyber security paradigm rather, and how hackers are looking into an organization and how they usually get in, and sometimes they get into the neighborhood machines as well. We'll show you a demo of how to do this, and we'll also talk about how technologies like Zero Trust are protecting the application and network by hiding themselves away from the hackers. What you can see is what you can hack. What you cannot see, you cannot really even try to enumerate or hack in, right? So 2020-21 was the golden era for most of the hackers around the world. Every organizations and individuals took their applications and data over to internet because they had to share with employees, they had to share with partners, vendors, or friends to collaborate, as nobody could reach to the organizations themselves due to the lockdowns we had throughout. Even going forward, at least good amount of work is going to be in the same fashion. And we all be having our critical data out in the online much more than what was the case a year back. Today, AI and ML based bots are evolving. As technology grows, as ML and AI kind of technologies are going to evolve more and more, even hackers are going to get access to it. They're going to develop more sophisticated frameworks to get into the infrastructures, to get into the applications and explore more in the same arena. And many cases, organizations are not even aware that they got hacked because there is no trails left out. And it is most of the time the weakest endpoints of an organization that is getting hacked, from which they can traverse or from which they can reach out to even the build servers, like happened in SolarWinds recently. And today, IT admins are busy patching the softwares, patching all the perimeter endpoints, but we don't know the fact that, or many of us are not focusing on the fact that there are vulnerabilities that are not known to OEMs, and many of these are actually getting sold in the illegal part of the internet. So there's a limit up to which we can protect applications and networks. In a few cases, it has pretty old applications which you cannot modify as well, right? So let's go to the perimeter and take a look at it. At the perimeter, we have firewall and VPN protecting generally a network, right? How safe are they? One problem today with VPN network is, once you're inside the network, you're pretty much inside the organization's whole set of assets. You can ping the neighborhood machines, you can sometimes reach them, and we can take over. Let's look into that as well in our demo today. So yeah, I'll get into the demo piece. So we have a series of demos planned for this. It's in a short period. I'll just rush through it. Sorry about that. We will take you through how to crash an OpenVPN server. What will happen if you crash a server? Whoever is accessing the network will be dropped off, and nobody else can create a new connection to the network as well. So starting off with the demos, sharing the screen. I'll just clear this off. So on the right side, I have OpenVPN server. And on the left side, I have a machine meant for attacking the OpenVPN server. Let's look at the IPs. If config. So here the IP is 1.17 and OpenVPN server is configured at 1.20. So all these demos are being performed on my laptop, on the machines that I own on my private laptop. It is to be done in that manner, in the sense you should have legal permission to perform these activities, even if it is even if it is an asset owned by your organization or somebody else. You should have the relevant permissions to do it. Otherwise, it is an illegal operation. And all the vulnerabilities that are showcasing today are available in the public domain. Even the source codes I'm showing you in this speech are pretty much available on the internet. We can just Google and find out. It's that easy. Why? Because I wanted to make sure that we are not leaking out anything newly in this conversation. Okay, going back to the demo. On the left side, I have 1.17, right side, I have 1.20. So let's start the VPN server at 1.20. I'd kept the commands ready so that we can start off quickly. OpenVPN is listening now at the server side. It is listening for the connections. So at this point, employees can connect to the network. Employees, partners, vendors, whoever is connecting to the network can reach there. And another machine in the network who can also reach in the network is going to get in there. Let's have a look at it. I'll show you the code. The meanwhile, I'll confirm the IP is correct as well. We're going to shoot it on 1.20, which is the same IP at the port 1194. This is a port which has been used by OpenVPN in general, so everybody will use it. Even if somebody else is using a different port, we can use tools like Nmap to find that out, which is the port has been used. So you may ask how to identify the OpenVPN servers in the internet or any other VPN endpoints, right? We have tools or even Google search available to identify VPN endpoints, URL-based, web-based VPN endpoints of many of the vendors today, and maybe most of the vendors today, because they are accessible publicly and it has been indexed by the search engines as well. So I'm going to shoot it. Python 3, the same script, boom. So the OpenVPN server has crashed and it has come out and given the console back to you. What has actually happened? We have got a bug hit at SSL.c 3711 inside the VPN code, because of which when the request has come, the OpenVPN couldn't address it. It has crashed itself with a fatal error. And after this point, nobody can access the network because VPN has crashed. VPN server is no more listening to any request coming in. So that is about OpenVPN. Let's move on. I'll take you through another scenario. Let me show you some of the scripts. This is scripts that can be used against one of the very well-known vendor. I don't want to name. So, and this script can be used to get into the particular VPN network. What we're doing in the script here is we are adding a new password and a user into the network so that this user and password can be used later from your device, any of your device, to connect yourself into the same network. So what we're doing here, being an external user, we can become part of a VPN using this particular script. And later we know how to get into the neighborhood machines. So again, I'm repeating, what we're covering here is how in general hackers are looking into the networks and machines. What are some of their most common approaches? Okay, going forward, I'm going to take you through two more scenarios. In one of the scenario, we'll be getting to a Windows box, exploiting one of the most commonly used service of theirs, RDP. RDP is being used to connect to the console of the machine. And today, employees and contractors, everybody connect to the machine present in the cloud as well, often. I personally have gone through a scenario in which one of our customer was hacked at their RDP point. In the sense, what they did is the server which is hosting SAP was exposed via RDP to the CTO who was traveling and who was in Norway. and the company is present in Tirupur. The hackers got into the box, later even to the neighborhood boxes. They had to shut the company operations for a day in order to ensure that the spread is stopped. I did really help them to come out of that particular incident as well by recovering the files from the hard disk, the encrypted files. Before getting in there, right, we should actually protect the organization at the endpoint or the entry point itself. So yeah, that's a different story. Let me take you through the RDP hack. I have the Windows machine running. It's a temporary box which I set up for this setup. It has, let me check the IP of it. IP is 1.19. So let's try to ping that machine. 1.19. It's pinging. In some cases, the machine will not be pinging. Assuming that machine is not responding to your pings, we still can find out the machine and its services and what is running in the machine, making use of the tools like Nmap. Let's try that out. Just show you in the demo. It sometimes takes more than 10-15 seconds and highly depend upon how fast is your network and how fast is the reach. It very clearly tells us that at the port 3389, you have the RDP server enabled. Even if you change the port, we can find out here using the Nmap, right? So let's try to exploit this machine using this particular service. We will send malformed requests and packets to this particular port and take over the machine, get the administrator shell, access the desktop of a user, and later add our own file into his desktop. Basically, we'll replace one of his files with the same name, or we can just download a file from his machine and then upload the same file at the same path after modification. So the intention could be to make use of forcing the user to execute what you want to execute, or you are in this kind of scenarios, the user is not knowing that someone else has got into your machine and they are still looking into your machine, or they are continuing to steal data from your machine, right? Again, this is a demo, not to be repeated if the target machine is not yours. I'm going to make use of MSF framework. It is a Ruby-based framework available in Kali Linux. And this framework has good amount of non-vulnerabilities embedded in it. They have coded it and kept it so that we can directly use it for security validations against the target. So I'm going to search for a particular vulnerability called BlueKeep. So aux modules are generally used to understand whether the target is vulnerable or not. And exploit modules are generally used to exploit the target. We're going to exploit it. In this case, I have to set the target as VM because I'm making use of the VM. If the target is a machine in the network, we have to set the target as 1. Or many cases, automatic fingerprinting as well will work. And we have to say which is the remote host. Set our host. What was the IP of the Windows machine? IP was 1.19. 192.168.1.19. Okay, so show options. We are going to attack the port. We can modify this port if the port is different. We're going to attack the port 3389 of this machine using the BlueKeep vulnerability. It takes a minute sometimes. We are going to log the X in the channel, waiting for the session. So in these kind of scenarios, what we're going to get is the Metaflow shell embedded inside the MSF framework. It has its own commands, but may not be that user-friendly for the common users. We can execute the command shell and get the actual shell as well, actual Windows admin shell as well. I'll take you through that flow once it's ready. So right now we are still attacking the target and trying to get the access. So this is how once the attacker has got into the network, the next stage is this, right? You need to look into the neighborhood machines, understand them, what are the operating system they have, what are the applications they are hosting, and later try to get the access. So this is generally a security researchers as well will be validating in the process of VAPT, like we do for our customers in InstaSafe. This is a Metaplow shell. So just going for a user-friendly shell just to showcase how easy is it to access. We have got the DOS shell of that particular Windows machine, which I showed you. Here it is. It's a remote machine. We have accessed it via one of the vulnerabilities they have in the remote console access. I can do the DAR, or I can travel to any other place. Pretty much any DOS command I can, or I am aware of, I can execute here. I can go to C drive, I can go to users, DAR, that's users. I can see the users inside the machine. I can go to the particular user desktop as well. I can download and upload the files as well, making use of the command, the Metaplow shell, which I showed you before. What you'll have to do is download. You have to give the full path. Which file will I take? I think there's an antivirus file out there. Did I do DAR? No. I can do DAR here as well to find out what is present. There is an antivirus installed file. Let's try to download that here. Yes, done. At this point, we can even modify it. And later I can upload the same file to the directory I'm in. At this point, the end user of, or the users of the Windows machine, here it is myself, Prasad, is not aware somebody else have accessed it and replaced the file sitting in the desktop. And he may end up executing all the time when he runs that script. Okay, that's about getting into a Windows machine. Now let's look into the aspect of Linux. Most common ways in which a Linux box is accessed is via SSH. We will make use of the same protocol and get inside a remote Linux machine. I have configured a Linux box here with a particular vulnerability at SSH, the libSSH framework. So it is 1.121. So let's look into 1.21. Is it accessible from here? Yes, the Kali box can access it. So we are going to make use of another vulnerability there. So even if you're not able to ping there, we can use Nmap. We just saw it. Another way to look at is hyphen the netcat NC, right? So what was IP 21? I can just check whether the 22 port is open. Yes, it is open, and it is using the libSSH version 0.83. It links the version out here. So many cases they do it. Our softwares will leak the information that should not be leaked. So I'm going to make use of a script. It's at scripts SSH libssh folder. Yes, here it is. I'll open it and show it. What we're doing here is we're making a sort of bug inside SSH protocol. We are telling the Paramega module that it is an authenticated user, already authenticated user. So go ahead and run the command that we are sending. The bug allows an unauthorized user to execute command as an administrator user, which is root in a Linux box generally, right? So going back to see what is IP, it is 1.21. So we'll have to set the IP as 1.21. Port 22 is where SSH is configured. And we are going to send the commands coming in to the remote machine. Basically, the argv1 is the string that we send as parameter to the script that will be executed. Okay, I have to save it because I changed the IP. Let's run it. Python 3 exploit.py. Are we in the same location? No, let's go there and run it. So I'm going to execute the command ifconfig so that we'll really get to know it is a target machine. So 1.21, we got the IP. You can also check who am I. I'm root. So I'm executing the commands at the remote machine as root. So we saw how a user can get into a Linux box. We saw how a user can get into a Windows box. And we saw how infrastructure like VPN can be hacked. So in general, it is about technology and hackers' knowledge and skills when it comes to penetrating into a network. Or in other words, it is very hard to really protect applications and softwares from getting hacked. The best way is to segment the network, limit the user access to the least required privilege access. Otherwise, what happens is organizations will get hacked, again hacked, because they are going to have the same infrastructure every day, or the hackers also will update the same way the organizations are updating today. As a conclusion, I would like to add that it is not easy to protect each and every application and their access, but it is easier compared to that when we protect the perimeter. So time has come. We have to ensure that we are providing the least privilege access to every required user. So when a user accesses an application, he is just able to access the application and not see the peer users or the other machines in the same network. And we can always have technologies like zero trust infrastructure, which will ensure all these security policies or the secure mechanisms that I'm talking about. It is also important when a user is given access to a machine, he is segmented at the network level to his access, so that even if somebody hack in, and if end user device like laptop get hacked in, even if a hacker get into the infrastructure of the organization, his access perimeter should be limited. So this can be achieved by network segmentation, the single packet authorization kind of technologies. All these are bits and pieces of zero trust. I encourage you all to read more and more about it. So CSA has recently come up with the STP guidelines and STP architectures. Recently means it's been a few years now. We should all look into these strong network perimeter and methodologies it is the time we have to ensure that our infrastructures and applications are protected and kept away from the external hackers and users, so that our asset is secure. Thank you.